dumbfounded is there wasn't a Safe Schools Act anymore. It had already gone. But to these folks, it was still there. And these folks aren't 3 or 4 people. These folks are entire communities. But they're the communities of disengaged youth and their parents and their families that have suffered terribly from the neglect. To them, the Safe Schools Department is code for the alienation department, the oppression department. So for God's sakes, get rid of the language. We proposed rethinking the paradigm of safe schools and the discipline paradigm and injecting the notion of managing youth with both discipline and equity. Now, equity is a funny word. You say it to those who are already converted. They like it. They love it. But for those not converted, they don't even know what you're talking about. In our report, we go on at length to explain what we mean by equity. Equity means one size does not fit all. Equity means taking into account people's differences. Equity means injecting a form of compassion, legislatively and otherwise. And so we suggested marrying up the health of the school with notions of equity. And we suggested taking the people that work in safe schools right now and maintaining their roles under a department we call the Well-Being Department and marrying it up with a real equity department that doesn't exist at TDSB right now and calling it the Well-Being and Equity Department. Marrying the two concepts of discipline and equity so that each time on the ground somebody's contemplating disciplining a complex needs youth, that they are informed by expertise in equity, that we learn how to work the two concepts together. There will be times you have to discipline. There is no choice. But when it's informed by principles of equity, we achieve that balance that is essential to the health of a school. The recommendations on the Well-Being and Equity Department go completely unacted upon. We learned in our work over the 7 months that turning a blind eye to dangerous conduct by students and by staff is not an isolated incident, but a recurring incident. It doesn't mean that everyone does it. It just means that it happens both at the student level and the teacher level on a frequency that's disturbing. You pick a school to look at because a shooting happens there. Months later, administrators are suspended because they turned a blind eye, in some cases, to very serious conduct that victimized a youth unrelated to the shooting. Then you find out the problem you've identified goes beyond that school, and then you find out about its frequency elsewhere. We itemize in the survey work why staff feel constrained to report. And we determine that youth are truly at risk. So we recommended to the province that they create a provincial officer as a point person on school safety. That recommendation has not been heeded. That provincial school safety and equity officer would be a repository for whistleblower-style complaints. When a teacher complains about an allegation of sexual assault to a student and it isn't acted upon by administrators, that teacher would be entitled to avail themselves of whistleblower protections and report the incident to the provincial officer who would be responsible to follow up. Not acted on. We have heard repeatedly from the Human Rights Commission of the difficulties and challenges they've had with the TDSB following through on the human rights settlements. They're now 3 years old. We recommended that since you have these two intransigent positions between the Human Rights Commission and the TDSB, that the provincial school and equity officer be responsible to receive yearly compliance reports from the TDSB on their efforts with the Human Rights Commission settlement. not acted on. Who pays the price for the political paralysis? Our youth. They are our treasured asset. It is, at its heart, in my view, a reality that folks such as yourselves are responsible to move the agenda because others won't, or cannot, or are unable to. We have recommended, and that recommendation was acted upon by the Provincial Advocate for Child and Youth, Agnes Samsel. We recommended that she go into Westview and into the First Nations school. And she has reported to the legislature that she intends to conduct systemic reviews at those two schools. You should be calling her, find out where her work is at. You should be asking her for reports and offering to assist. The system will not change from within. Perfect examples of people in high-level positions that want to see change or publicly committed themselves to change but are unable to affect it are like Director Connolly, who has clearly spoken out that she would like to see changes, politically unable to do it. In my respectful view, at the end of the day, you as advocates need to consider what the Quakers spoke of in the Cold War years between the U.S. and Russia in the 50s. The Quaker movement spoke an adage that became a very, very popular sentiment: speak truth to power. You as advocates must speak truth to power. But given the experience of the School Community Safety Advisory Panel, I'd like to put an addendum to speak truth to power. And it's this: speak truth to power and then duck. Thank you.